Thanks for coming on, Chuck. This is Leaving the Wire. We're doing season 2. We haven't been in the studio or recorded a podcast in over a year, so we're excited. The show's Leaving the Wire. So in the military, we have a term, leaving the wire, whenever we go out on a mission and you leave like kind of your friendly lines, you're leaving the wire. It's like an invisible line, but you know, it's kind of like it's a very deep concept for us because, you know, anything can happen once you leave the wire and you're out on a mission and whatever else. Yeah. So, you know, we've taken a lot of our experiences in that realm and whatever else and just intent to distill them down for anybody listening or for anybody that we coach or work with to give them, you know, better tools for processes to deal with stress or obstacles. So we're excited to have you on. The whole purpose is, you know, to bring you in who you're an expert in the field of what you do as an action sport athlete in the water and in snow, and distill kind of how you got here and, you know, break down some different key points, you know, to distill to our listeners. So thanks for coming on. And Don?
Yeah, so leaving the wire for us is like a complete transition in mindset. Like, hey, it's time to go game time, you know, and you're so involved in going to your own game time all the time in the water and in the snow. So we just really want to hear some of your story and invite you on. And you're an amazing friend to us. You're an amazing athlete and competitor within UTL. So a lot of people probably know you from hitting those big skiing down Mavericks, you know, and just doing some crazy things in the water and in the snow. So, you know, tell us a little bit about what young Chuck came from and how he got to skiing down to Mavericks.
I mean, for me, you know, it all comes from our parents and how we grow up, and I was super fortunate. You know, I had, my mom was a European ski racer from Austria, and my dad was a nuclear physicist. So wow. I had kind of the best of both worlds or the worst of both worlds, you know, looking at, my dad was a strict disciplinarian, but very methodical thinker. And I mean, it was, you know, education was key and that he lived and breathed that. And then my mom was, you know, an athlete that turned into a professional athlete and yet very smart. And she also, you know, went to school for physics and stuff. So, you know, for me, it was, you know, we grew up I was born in Northern California, and then we moved back to Europe, and then I basically went to a school there that was run, you know, at a church by nuns and stuff, and German ended up being my first language. So that was kind of a trippy thing. And then when I was around 8 years old, we moved back to Berkeley, Northern California, and in that time, my mom, skiing was a huge deal, you know, for her. So my sister and I both started skiing when I was pretty much like 2 years old. And we lived and breathed. That was like our action, what we always did. And my dad was more of a hunter and you know, had his work stuff. So he wasn't, you know, all about the sports thing, but you know, we always went on trips, and then we had some property in Tahoe, and that just became kind of the thing. You know, skiing was just like eating and breathing, and then school. So kind of as I grew up, I really started to kind of blossom and enjoy the action, you know, and activity, and that's what got me going. School was one of those things where, you know, I loved the community and how it was, but it was a lot of work, and my mind was looking at being outside and doing sports, and that's what really motivated me. So as I got older, my mom started actually pushing water sports as well, and she became a professional windsurfer and started competing in that, and I would always go with her, you know, to go train. Because I could get out of school early and whatever, and I'd go with her, and then suddenly I found myself totally immersed in it. And so I started, you know, doing the races and stuff with her, and then I just found anything that she was super into, I just locked into it, and I kind of got the red carpet underneath her to kind of go. And then I just found that was what I wanted to do. And it wasn't really just one sport or anything, I just wanted to do whatever my mom was doing. And so when it got into skiing, I went 150% in that. And then I really loved the water and how both of them were kind of different, yet the same. And as I just got more and more into it, I started getting sponsors. And but I did find out that you can't do sports and not do school. Like I had to, what ended up happening was I ended up flunking out of 2 classes because I ended up going to go surf in the morning and do other things, and thought that was the way to do it and I could get away with it. And when that happened, my mom and dad had separated, and she basically said, look, you're going to the Army, you're going to the Navy, you're out of here, you're obviously blowing it, And I said, Mom, it's, sports, I really like this. And she goes, you have to do school, and so it was either move to my dad or, enlist. And so there was, and I don't know if it still is, but there was the ASVAB test, which was one of those. And I think you could take it a couple times to get a higher placing or whatever. And I totally got into it, and I got kind of cocky, and I'm like going, well, I'm just going to do this. No big deal. So all the friends that I did sports with and whatever and surfed, they basically one evening, sat me down and said, look, dude, you're pretty much, and we all didn't really kind of know, but basically you're going to be owned by the government. We're not going to see you. You're not going to be able to surf. You're not going to be able to ski. You're not going to be able to do anything. Yes. And if that's what you want to do, then just kiss all that goodbye. And I was like, are you serious? Because I was thinking I could go do that and then do it and still do everything. And so it scared me, and I said, all right, I'm over it. I'm moving to my dad's. I moved to my dad's. He was only a mile away, but he was in a different district. I went to Oakland Tech High School, which was an all-black school, and I got humbled real quick. But I think what saved me was that I was kind of a class clown, but I held my own, and I kept people laughing. And so I never had any issues, made a lot of longtime friends, and I grew up in the hood, for a good little portion of that. And but the cool thing was I could separate myself and still go and do my sports, and anything I did, I just did 150%, and it just went up the ladder, and that's what kind of did it for me. So my dad basically sat me aside and said, look, you can do whatever you want, but you've got to apply yourself in school, and if you apply yourself and do your homework and whatever, and you show me, then I'm going to do it. My dad his thinking was solid, and if I could get his, basically approval, then I was like, all right, I'm golden. So sure enough, I did what he said and powered it out, and I ended up graduating straight A's and way above, it was like a 4.3 or whatever, way above that I ever thought, in high school. And then he was like, all right. So he got me into, showing me how to navigate and get into surfing, and then and he knew nothing about it, but he was one of those people that could basically watch it for an hour and then understand, and then suddenly just regurgitate it to me, and I was like, no way. And then for me, once I got that and I found my interest in something, I didn't like learning or being taught by somebody. I was very visual, so I always wanted to do it on my own and really learn. So I had the trials and tribulations of really getting beaten down or doing the wrong thing, but I learned. If someone told me, hey, this is what you need to do, this is a shortcut, it never really sank in. And so for me, that was the way I did it. And then I just started just doing that in all my sports, and went from one sport to another, and started learning the business side of things, and to where I was like, I can make money doing this and be able to travel and compete. And then that competitive spirit just kind of grew more and more. And the last kind of jump that kind of pushed me into the direction where I'm now is I was enrolled to go to school for college, and I got a contract that was like a life dream contract from a windsurf company to get paid to travel the world and compete and basically teach and whatever. And I didn't have the heart to talk to my dad. I was scared, because he was all about, if you're going to Berkeley, you're gonna do something with your life, and it took me like a month or so to talk to him, and finally I got my courage to talk to him, and I said, Dad, I don't know how to say this, but I want your approval, but I really have my heart in sports, and I've got this opportunity, and then I just kind of froze up, and I was like, oh, he's gonna kick my butt, and then he basically said, look, what took you so long? I already knew about all this before. It's like, why did it take you so long to do this? And then I was like, are you kidding me? So I was just blown away, and then I had to sell it to him, and I said, look, you've always been one of those things that do 100%, don't look back, don't wonder, don't waste my time, and I have a feeling this is what I want to do, is lifelong dream, and I want to do it and not look back, and I'm not doing it twice, and so that was his thing. It goes, if you do it 150%, and if there's any thought that it might not work, then it's not going to work, and so I took that, and it was kind of like a test, and I never looked back, and I ended up traveling all over the US, all over pretty much the globe, Europe, Australia, whatever, competing and just piling money away, just so I could keep myself going and never had to go back to my parents and ask. And then it just went from there. I got into so many more sports. I ended up moving to Maui and just super immersed in the whole water lifestyle and surfing big waves and kiteboarding and windsurfing, and just that was my life, And then training became the biggest thing, to me, was to keep myself out of the hospital. Health insurance was super expensive and out of control. And the funny thing was I had gotten insurance just like normal people do. I'm just going to get insurance, whatever. And I was competing skiing, and I get a call from the insurance company saying, you're basically red flagged because you're competing in sports. And I said, what do you mean? It's just a hobby. And he says, well, we saw you on ESPN on a thing, and you're jumping 80-foot cliffs, and you've been red flagged, And I was like, I'm like, no, but that's just fun. And and she was like, I would love to just believe that, but you're high risk and we can't do that. And so I ended up having to basically bail on insurance because it ended up being $700-800 a month. And I, as a grown up teenager, whatever, I couldn't afford that. So the dumbest thing ever, I basically said, well, I got to save my money. And so I ended up getting full bore into training in the gym and just understanding the more I put into this, it's high risk, but if I love it, and the training is going to basically keep me out of the hospital. And that's what I did. And I did that for, I'm still doing it now. Obviously now I have insurance, but it really kind of forced me to,
what a mindset.
Yeah, to kind of put my head down and go, is this what I want? And never look back. And I was always kind of motivated by people that said, you can't do that, or that's not possible, or don't waste your time, you're not good enough. And for me, that was kind of like fire that kind of lit under my butt to prove them wrong.
It's your why.
Yeah, exactly. That was where I just went. And then so anything I did, I ended up, just really pushing forward. And I made a point to meet the best athlete in that sport. And for the weirdest, I don't even know how it worked. We would gravitate or something like that, and I'd meet the best athlete or set of athletes that were in that sport when I got into it. And I would just learn and pretty much live the lifestyle that they lived, and then would come up the ranks a lot quicker than I would have thought. And suddenly I'm competing at their level and, winning world championships and stuff. And for me, that was kind of, it just drove me in it, and it just kind of proved, I could prove to other people, look, dude, anything's possible, and I came from, a really good lifestyle, but I had to work for it. We didn't live by the beach, and I remember it took 2 hours to take a bus with my surfboard and my skateboard, down the street at 4 a.m, and then go to the beach and to learn surfing. Damn. It wasn't that, and I did that, and that's how I flunked out of school, because it took so long to get back to school, whatever. But it was that hunger from the beginning that I still kind of carry now, and it was a kind of a great runway of getting me into all these different things and just pushing forward. And then I had a lot of jobs. I did construction, I built homes, I was a bartender, I did whatever it took to kind of still feed that, and then the competition that came along with it, I just learned from being younger and skiing and snowboarding, and that I really like fed off of competition, you know, and I really loved it. And so it was one of those things that came hand in hand, and you know, and then you're making money, and I'm still wanted to be approachable and humble, you know. There were some athletes that I followed that had such an attitude that I was like, I never in a million years want to be someone like that. I want to be able to be out there and be the best, but then be able to talk to anybody and be able to share, you know, how to get there, because it's, you know, it's a kind of a dog eat dog world, and sometimes it feels like people don't want you to get there, you know. So
Agree.
yeah. I probably went all over the place on that.
No, that's great, man. We'll take all that information out there.
No, and that's why we call you Chuck the Truck. But super inspiring, man, to hear, you know, the background and your mindset and how you got here. What I'm hearing you say is that you had a big intention when you started, that you went all in the conversation with your dad, also aligning with your purpose and you wanting to prove yourself and prove others. That it took you very far. And then also, you know, the experience-based learning. I mean, I've failed so many times in my life and gotten in trouble, or been in the Marine Corps, gotten in trouble, or just done these things and kind of had to hit my head against the wall in order to learn, because I'm not learning just because someone tells me something. And so that experiential-based learning, or that on-the-job OTJ training in life, is critical. So it's really inspiring to hear how much like you've gotten, and how much you're getting out of life, that you're just going all in, you know?
Yeah.
And you just had like so many opportunities to try so many different sports, compete in them, and like be some of the best at it. So with all these sports that you could play and compete in and train now, like what are your top threes throughout your lifetime?
I mean, for me, growing up skiing and still kind of like pushing it now, skiing is definitely one of my ultimate favorites. But then it kind of goes right into being in the ocean. I mean, it's really hard to kind of say what sport, you know, is like one of my favorites. Or I'd say basically skiing for sure. And then surfing, you know, big wave surfing. And then also whatever goes along with that, whether it be foiling or whatever, because that's kind of one of the newer sports. But for me, it was I love the idea of going with the seasons, and also being able to let Mother Nature tell you like, hey, today's going to be super windy and there's going to be big surf, and what are you going to do? And instead of being one of those athletes that goes, oh, it's crappy conditions, you know, today's not the day. For me, I'd be like, oh, great. Now I get to go grab my windsurfing stuff or my kiteboarding stuff, or I'm going to go foil, or we're going to take the ski out and get big waves, or you know, whatever. I think my biggest fear was not being good enough to do something when the chance happened, you know, when the moment came to me. And so that's why I was so driven to, you know, go from one sport to do another. And they all kind of complemented and kind of, I think, intertwined. You know, one would complement the other. Like skiing is so different from big wave surfing, but yet you're dealing with, you know, a fear of heights, or, you know, going big off big cliffs, high speed, high risk. And that to me is, you know, how they kind of went together. So I don't know.
So I guess you had the opportunity to combine your two favorites, right? Skiing and surfing.
That's right.
So tell us a little bit about that mindset. What was going on through your mind? What was the challenge that made you want to do that? And just go into that story a little bit for us.
Well, going into that story, for me, I always loved when people said, that's not doable, that's not possible. And that kind of, you know, really got a fire going. And so we had this really cool opportunity where a good friend of mine, who's passed away now, but Shane McConkey, he's a just world-renowned Red Bull athlete, insane skier and base jumper. We all skied together in Lake Tahoe, and I learned a lot from him. But he went and took a pair of water skis down a pretty insane mountain in Alaska and ripped it to shreds. I mean, it was awesome. And it was just to kind of, he was always one of those guys that would do anything just to make people just, you know, be like, are you kidding me? That's not possible. And he would just shut people up. He'd be like, oh yeah, it is. And I don't care if you don't like it or not, because I love it. So in doing so, he also changed how skiing, you know, how the sport of skiing and the equipment came out, because he proved that, from the small skis that we had, that you could have wide skis and just be on top of the powder and just rip the crap out of it. And so when he did that, it was like a huge turning point in skiing. And being that I already had my love for surf, and I was always going to Maui and charging the big waves and chasing that, and still skiing, he was like, dude, this is a perfect opportunity. You should try water skis, or something like that, and ski down the waves. And, it kind of reminds me of that when you're a little kid in school and you draw that big wave and this little guy, and it was kind of like that, where we were going, it sounds crazy on paper, but when we started thinking more about it, we're all, dude, it's totally doable.
It sounds crazy anyway.
So it was kind of one of those things. So I was like, all right, just because he proved his point in the snow, and I was like, he goes, there's no better candidate. You're doing both. You should at least give it a shot. And I was like, you're totally right. So I went out with a good friend of mine, and I got a pair of jumper water skis that had no side cut, but they were just giant planks. And I went out, and we went out to this reef, and we pulled in a couple times, and I slung in off the jet ski and rode down, and you would coast for like 200 yards, but they were so hard to turn, and there was just too much. There were no side cuts, so it was just, for me, you were just racing down the line, and then you'd kind of pass the wave, and it just in my head wasn't really what I was thinking about doing turns.
How big are these waves?
The waves are like, it wasn't giant. It was like 25-foot faces. It's
pretty big, dude.
Maybe like 4 times overhead, but totally. but we felt like that, being in Maui, that was kind of what you needed, for skis and stuff. So when we went and did it, I kind of wasn't seeing in my mind. I was going, well, I want to do turns. This isn't really skiing for me. So I was like, all right. I tabled it, and I said, all right, it's not really the way I, envisioned it. So I kind of said, well, I'll get back to that. So maybe 8 years later, I had 2 friends of mine, ripping skiers, this guy, Cody Townsend and Mike Douglas, and the ripping skiers that were a little bit younger than myself, that suddenly had this idea to go take on the ski thing in the waves. And they were just big mountain skiers, and they surfed a little, but, they were like, well, there's got to be something with it. So they got a bunch of different skis. A couple companies were starting to make some custom stuff just for fun. And so they went to Maui for a month, and long story short, they put their time into it and started doing turns down these waves. And they came out with a cool video edit, and they sent it to me, which kind of irked me. I'm like, are you kidding me? But the equipment was by far way better. And I was like, all right, that's it. I got on the phone. I said, I need a pair of these skis, and I'm going to take it to the next level. That's rad what you guys did, and I'm stoked. But now that was my green light. I'm like, all right. So I got a pair of skis, and I mounted some regular ski bindings on it, and took regular ski boots, and drilled holes in it so the water would flush out. And the reason in doing so was that it would keep the ski a lot more stiffer. And in big waves, there's a lot of bumps, and with the rubber bindings that water skis have, your feet go all over the place, and it just wasn't stiff enough. So once we got that all dialed out, I decided, those guys weren't using ski poles. There's really no need to, but for me, I just felt like it basically is really good for your body positioning, and you don't have your hands out like this, so you're bouncing, and it looked really lame. Yeah, so I was like, all right, I'm going to do that. So I put some flotation on those, and we went out to Central California on a big swell, and I was with a bunch of my buddies. And so I had gotten these skis, and I got them all dialed and made sure the bindings worked, and I put them in this bag with the ski poles. And when we were, loading the skis and putting them in the water, I had taken the ski boots, and I put them in a bag, and I put them in the front, hatch, and didn't want anyone to see it. And then I had the bag that was on the rescue sled, and everybody's like, dude, what's that? It's something I've been working on, but don't worry about it. So I put it there. So everything was hidden. And then we had our regular tow boards, to surf. And so we went out Morro Bay, and went to the spot, which was like a big A-frame, like a TP wave that would just break, go right and left. And it was like solid 40-foot faces. And super fun day. And so we're out there towing, and the conditions are really good. And then, like, with 2 hours in, I told my partner that was driving, I said, dude, I really want to try these skis, you know? And so he goes, all right. So we kind of drive away from the reef, and those guys are still towing. And I grab the skis, pull them out. I put my ski boots on. It took like a half an hour because, you know, your feet are wet. And then I had shampoo, and I'm trying to put them on. And I finally got them on. And, you know, it was kind of like wearing, you know, cement shoes. You know, you're like, oh, man, if I go down, I'm going to sink to the bottom. But so I got that all dialed. I slammed my feet in the skis, and I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. And then I grabbed the ski poles and put my straps on. And so I'm in the water, and I've got some flotation on, so I'm kind of sitting high, and jet ski goes by, and I grab the end of the rope, and I said, dude, let's just get me to the wave with speed, and I'm going to let go and do a big carve. And he's like, okay. And, you know, he's all right, dude, whatever. And so we get over, we're towing over, and then, you know, the two other teams that are out there, you know, are on the ski and being towed out with their surfboards, and they're like, what the hell? And so they immediately went to the sides and just wanted to watch me eat shit. I mean, they were going, oh, this is going to be awesome entertainment. So we go out, and we got this one big set comes, and we turn on the wave, and we start going, and the jet ski's right in the front. He's kind of down in the trough, and he's going, and he kind of peels out to the right. And so I kind of like swing far left to get as much speed as possible. I'm holding onto the rope, and I let go. And the minute I let go, I kind of drop in and start the whole wave starts to really rear up, and I'm carving off the side, and I instantly get into ski mode, and with the ski poles, I'm doing a turn, I carve one way, and it was a little bit different because you're riding the tails more than skiing. You're kind of riding the center of the ski more. And I started to figure it out like within seconds while I'm doing it, you know, and so I'm carving, I carve back and forth, and then suddenly the wave starts to flatten out a little bit, and then as it flattens out, I kind of slow down, and then the wave breaks and behind me, and then like just the whitewater comes up over me and past me, and I kind of lean back, and I'm like, oh, I'm going down so hard, and I lean back, and the whitewater kind of kept me up, and then I leaned forward, and then just kind of went into tuck, and I came flying out, and then shot out to the channel, and you know, totally safe out, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I was like looking for, you know? So I grabbed them, I'll just get another. And so we went, and I think we got, I don't know, maybe like 10, 12 waves, and all my buddies were tripping out, you know, and I was just making a point, I'm not going to eat shit, because if I did, basically, I can't pop the bindings off, I'll probably break my legs, you know, something will happen, you know, and so I just kept getting better and better, and carving turns, and getting, you know, a little deeper, and then I was like, all right. So one of my buddies had taken a picture and sent it to Surfer Magazine, and they ran a full page of it on the back, you know, on the back page of the magazine, and suddenly it just, you know, went hellfire everywhere, where people were going, no way, that's a circus stunt, this and that, and whatever. And so I was super stoked, but that wasn't really the end of it for me. For me, I was like, okay, now I know what I can do, but I want to really go deeper with it. So the next, you know, couple months, I took it out, you know, different breaks, and then I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. But it wasn't one of those things you do all the time. It had to be good conditions. And so then the next year, I thought, well, for me, I want to do it in the best conditions where it's really going to be looked at as like, holy shit, you know? And so I looked at it, Jaws. We had that big wave, you know, in Maui, and it's pretty much like Alaska to skiing. It's like you go there, you do anything, and it's going to be the shit, you know? And so when Red Bull got involved, and my buddies that were running, you know, that Cody Townsend and Mike Douglas were doing kind of like a Solomon Ski TV, and they're all, dude, we want to shoot this. So I said, well, we got a swell coming up, let's make it happen. And this time I get everything ready. I got a driver and a safety boat and stuff, and these guys were, you know, shooting with a helicopter. And so the swell came, but it wasn't really the best conditions. It was kind of a close swell, so there was a lot of wind with it. So we get out there, there's, you know, probably, I don't know, maybe 20 skis and people going all over, and the Brazilians are pretty aggressive there, and so they were just, everyone was trying to get big barrels and get pictures, and I'm like, oh, I don't know if this is the right time. And so I got a couple waves towing, and then I thought, you know what, if I'm going to do this, I better do it now before it gets worse. And I've got all this pressure because people are on the cliff shooting, and you got the helicopter and the boats. And so we go away from everybody, do the same thing. I throw the skis on, the boots and everything. And my buddy knows exactly how I am, so it wasn't shocking to him. And I said, let's do this. So we get out there and we pull up and we're waiting on the outside, and meanwhile all the other jet skis come up and they're looking at me like, what the frick is this guy doing, dude? This is a joke, you know? And so it took a half an hour for me to get a wave because no one was letting me get a wave. And so they were all going right, and I thought, you know what? I might as well just go left. And that's kind of a gnarlier, it's just everyone was going right because that wave was firing and was good, but left was going against the grain. I thought, you know what? I've got a good driver. If I can pull this off, I've got this. So sure enough, we decided to not deal with the mayhem. And as we were taking off, the Brazilian guys were going right and no one was going left. And I said, let's just go left. So he was going. And in that time, as we were coming in on the big set, I'm holding on the ski rope, and I'm kind of at the top of the wave, and he's about to duck out left. The helicopter that was shooting ends up coming close, and basically the rotor wash ended up driving down on me. And so I had let go of the rope, and the thing's starting to go and about to drop, and they come really close, and the rotor wash just almost flattens me, like it almost slows me down, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even going to make it in this wave. And I started slowing down. And then I kind of leaned forward, and I was like taking my ski poles, like I was trying to go in, and it was sort of working because it wasn't really like pushing, but it was just getting that momentum of my weight going forward. And I slowly got forward, and as the wave started to just about to break, I was right at the top. And as it threw, I just ended up dropping off the front and landed, and then arced a hard left turn and just was hitting all these bumps, and it was like full survival. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, and I'm not going to blow it, because it was like, I wasn't even going to think about it. I was like, dude, I just have to make it to the end. And I'm doing these turns, and I arc this turn, and I come and I kick out of the channel. My buddy comes and grabs me, and all I hear is people screaming from the boats, and the rescue, teams on the inside were all, oh, Chuck, no way. And I was like, you had so much adrenaline going, and I was like, oh my God, this is it. Let's get another. So we go back out, and we do it again, and I get 2 more waves, and then I was like, all right. I remember Laird Hamilton had said something to me. He says, you get 1, maybe 2 waves, you're okay. But if you get 3, you're getting greedy, and that's when the shit hits the fan. And so I got my 3rd one kicked out, and I said, dude, I'm good. I did what I wanted to do. I don't want to take a beating or go to the hospital. So we put everything away, and it just, it went crazy. I mean, social media just blew it up and whatever. And so the next day, the swell had died, but it got really clean, but it was still like 25, 30-foot faces. And so we went out, no one around, and we ended up towing for like 4 hours, and I got it so dialed, and just was like, dude, I'd rather do this than surf. I mean, it was awesome. And, went from there, and then, it kind of went crazy, and I ended up landing a couple really killer high-paying commercial jobs for a European ski company that was like, dude, we like your thinking of doing crazy stuff. And so we went and shot some cool videos, at another break, and it was just one of those fun things where people were like, dude, it's not possible. And then I was like, actually it is. And, and then from there it kind of kept going. And then obviously to this year, I had kind of taken a break from the whole wave ski thing because it was just kind of a fun thing. And then we had a giant swell this year, and with COVID and all the things going on that, you had to put 150% into every little moment because you just never knew what was going to happen. Are we able to surf again, whatever? And so we had a huge swell that was hitting Mavericks, and in a nutshell, my buddies were like, dude, you should come. You should bring the skis. You should, this would be something different. I mean, just do it. It's, you're getting older, dude, who knows, and it was always a bucket list. So sure enough, we went to Mavericks, and it was kind of like a reunion of seeing all the big wave guys that we used to always chase swell with back in the day. And so we came out there, and they were all surfing, and the surf was firing. I mean, giant barrels, it was going off, but no one was towing. And so I was just in the channel shooting all my friends, and they're all, yeah, Chuck, dude, the swell's getting bigger. You brought your tow board? I'm all, yeah. And he goes, dude, it's going to be game on here soon. So sure enough, the swell started coming in pretty big, but really inconsistent. And guys started towing, and they're like, come on, Chuck, you going? I'm like, all right. And I'm like, do I tow first, or do I just go right to my skis? And I'm like, I'm going to go to my skis and just go. So I did the same thing, went away from everybody so no one could ask. And we got on and had my buddy drive me, and we get way out there, and it's breaking, like on the sets, breaking a couple 100 yards way outside of the pack that was surfing. And so we pull over, and I see Jeff Clark and Peter Mel and Kai Laney and all these guys that are like all good friends and that are charging. They're all, yeah, Chuck, it's going to be good, dude. Hope you get a good one, So there was no attitude or anything. It was like, let's just make it happen. And then this one set came, and I let everybody go because they had been waiting. And then the third one, I was going to let it go, but everyone was chasing those waves. And I told them, I'm all, dude, let's go. Let's take this one in. And sure enough, we get the wave. I do a big turn, I let go, I've got the speed, and I'm arcing this turn back and forth, and then suddenly we go over a deep pocket, and it starts to slow down, and I do that same thing with the ski poles, and I'm like, ah! I go forward, and I finally get to the end, and then suddenly hits the inside bowl, and I just do this big drop, and meanwhile, all the guys that are surfing are kind of far on the shoulder, and they're all screaming, like, you would think they'd be like, get the hell out of here. But it was all my buddies were just going, yeah, Chuck. So I had all that going on, and the adrenaline. I do this bottom turn, and I come up, and I just do this arcing, kind of turn, come back. And, I drop and make it to the channel, and everybody's screaming. And I'm just like, oh, my God, that was epic. I need to get more. I really wanted it. That was the first wave, but I want to get one that's just insane. And unfortunately, the swell was super inconsistent. So we went back out, waited. But I didn't want to be that one person that went through the lineup and caused havoc, and then suddenly I'm the laughingstock. So we decided it was too much weight, and people were, all the surfers were moving into the channel. So I said, you know what, one wave's better than nothing. Cut my losses, we'll get out of there. And then that kind of exploded. And it was just a neat thing for, I'm 52 now, and I kind of was proving to myself that I'm not done yet. It was a way to kind of just go, I got this, and let's keep going, and so it was just a neat, fun kind of way to fire up kind of what could have been just kind of a boring year.
Yeah.
So
two questions with that. Yeah. Number one is, what are you going to call it?
Well, for me, I've been calling it wave skiing,
Wave skiing?
And it's kind of stuck, but it'll never be a sport. It's more so just one of those novelty things that people go, yeah, remember that guy that skied the wave? Yeah, that was nuts.
Yeah. We don't know that. Yeah. Weird random sports are coming up nowadays.
You're right.
But
exactly.
Second is like that mindset you're going in. Like sometimes the first time you hit that really big waves and you're kind of slowing down. What was like your mindset? Like, because we like to call it calm in the clutch. Performing under pressure when that time comes, like what was your mental switch? Like, hey, the helicopter's here, I got to make something happen.
What do you tell yourself?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's exactly very similar to what you guys deal with, when you're in a heated moment that it comes, and it's like time stands still. Like it's something that happens within milliseconds when you think about it. Gets drawn out to like minutes, it seems like. And it's weird how the power of the mind can process it, and you've got that fight or flight situation where you're just going, dude, it drowns out the failure. Like if you think failure, that's exactly where you're going, and it was one of those things where it's like a switch, and I had it in sports, I had it in as luck would have it, with all the different sports that I did, I got used to it. And then when I'd have a situation, I was so driven at my goal, and I'd done all the work. I did the homework, I've done the training, and this was a situation, it may not have been perfect, but I was still so driven that you kind of just go, all right, conditions aren't perfect, but I'm going to have to adapt. And the adaptation is really where you just suddenly go, I'm going to have to do something a little bit different. But the end goal is I'm making it to safety, and I'm going to make it happen. And it happens so quickly. And it's sometimes in those moments where it ends up being more glorious than you could have imagined, because you've basically bypassed some heavy, risky situations. And with just quick thinking and adjustments, suddenly you've made it. And when you've, accomplished it, you're like, dude, deep down you knew you could do it, but to be pressed hard and tested that hard, it made it that much sweeter. And it's almost addicting.
Hell yeah.
It's unreal. But I look at that in life for all the stuff we do. It may be not as intense, but I think everybody has that somehow.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of being able to tap into it.
Yeah.
And we're talking a lot about human performance right now. And so one big thing that I'm hearing, because the two root emotions are fear and love, right? But fear doesn't have to be a bad thing. And it can create an urgency within us, like I'm hearing from you, that you've used fear to actually reach those next levels, to create a sense of urgency and to commit and to reset your intentions to be like, no, I'm going to make it all the way through, and committing up front. So that's really powerful for anybody to hear that, because even like we train fighters, we train all these different people, we have fear. We have fear sometimes when we do the underwater training, right?
Yeah.
But being able to manage that fear is what's important, and being able to listen to your fear, being able to like understand your emotions and have that self-awareness is huge.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's extremely powerful to hear.
I mean, it's a neat thing. Like, fear to me seems like there's so many different ways to take it, but I mean, for me, I look at it as like a curb almost. That's like, your tires can hit it, you can go over it, but it's meant to kind of keep you somewhat like just acknowledge there it is. And if you're a little scared, that's okay, as long as you know what you're doing, but if you're reckless and you just go, dude, it doesn't matter, and you kind of go over the curb, you hit whatever, is past it, with basically reckless endangerment where you don't really care or give a shit. Some guys get away with murder, but 99% of the time, those guys pay the ultimate price somehow. Still alive, whatever, but I like that fear is one of those things that, hey, it's okay to be scared. I mean, you get that person that walks across the street is afraid to, step off the curb. But when they do it, it's with intention. It seems to be, I think, one of the best motivators that I've ever lived with. And it's helped me in life, period. There's many things, that in sports that we get very used to, or when we're training, and we use that fear to kind of press ourselves to a whole new level. And I feel that's when the real growth begins, is when we're pushing ourselves in unfamiliar territory, but we have that passion and drive to go forward. And I want to see what's in that unknown area. And that's when you start to blossom, and for me, I've even used that in just regular day-to-day life. And here I am going to go do a move across country, and I have a different fear, and that's just part of the love part, where you leave community. So yeah, it's fear is pretty insane.
So tell us about where you're going now, brother.
Well, I've, like all of us, challenge is a huge thing, and I've never basically succumbed to like, I'm not going to do it, it's too hard. But I've got an opportunity. I've 50 good years of doing everything I've wanted, and really just, in my mind, living good life and having fun. And I think now it's a new chapter, and it's not permanent, but I got an opportunity from one of my really good friends and sponsors to do a relocation and maybe like a reset for my life, and kind of, there comes a time where you kind of get real comfortable with what you're doing, and I don't like being bored, and I get fueled up by challenge and by something new to where I have to conquer it. And this is probably going to be one of my biggest, heaviest hurdles, I mean, so going to Vermont, of all places, 3 hours away from the ocean. We have water, which is, it's beautiful, but I've always wanted to own a farm and just do better with my family, and so we have an opportunity to go there. I've got a bucket list of things that I wanted to do, and get my pilot's license, get my heli license.
Wow.
get a house and just do more motivational speaking and just be around people that are at that next level that are really pushing things, you know, and environmental, like with the electric plane, and there's just so much stuff going on, and these guys are tapped into it, and they've kind of opened the door and said, hey, this might be your next, you know, endeavor, and you know, you're welcome to come and have at it, because you could, you know, good things can happen. So you don't get many doors like that open, and so I thought, you know what, with everything going on, this is probably a great time to push it, you know, and yeah, I'm gonna go for it. So.
Well, we can't wait to come visit you out there when you
Yeah.
get settled in, and also, what's up, bro?
No, I say we can't wait to play and start a team out there.
That's my biggest thing. I mean, that's been my hardest thing is the community we've created here, and then, dude, if I can't create a community there, dude, I probably will move back. That's what I need. So that's been my biggest motivator, is like, you know, what we have here is insane, and it's kept me going. And so that's kind of my biggest push to add, is to open that up there and share my passion for what we've been doing here and grow it there.
Yeah, but if you can't start it, bro, I don't know who else can. Yeah. We'll be here in full support. Whatever you need, we'll fly out there.
We'll make it happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
If for anyone listening, Chuck is an active underwater torpedo league player and also athlete with Deep in Fitness. So he's training with us, and he's training underwater out here with the community at least once or twice a week, on top of all of his other action sports activities. So it's really, you know, always a pleasure, and honestly, it's an inspiration. You've talked a little bit about glass ceilings. That's one of my favorite things about what you've said, is that, you know, when I see that video of you hitting Mavericks on the skis, that shatters glass ceilings for me. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's a big part of why we do what we do. And a lot of people don't know, but we got a lot of slack when we started doing Deep in Fitness and Underwater Torpedo League, of people hitting us up and saying, "No, this isn't possible. You guys can't do this training. You know, this can't exist. People are gonna die." And now we're 3.5 years in, and one of my favorite things is that we shatter people's glass ceilings, because we don't even hear that anymore, obviously. Yeah. But that's what I love about what you're doing. And then on top of that, you know, we have a mutual friend now with Robert Owens, who's just this, you know, you mentioned that you're 52, I'm 37. Robert Owens is 70. Yeah. And he's in just insane peak physical shape. Exactly. I have an older guy, 95 years old, 97 now, that's a former Marine Raider from World War II. And he was doing sprint triathlons when he was 94. So I look at him, I look at Robert Owens, I look at you as these inspirations to say, hey, when I'm your age, I want to be doing epic stuff too. And I know that it's possible because I see Chuck the Truck doing it. So, and then the last thing is, you know, flow versus drag. We always talk about flow and drag. And I noticed that a lot of my drag comes from mental drag. So I know that even if I was going to be moving to Vermont, there would be all this mental drag. And at some point I would have to just surrender that and just trust the process and enter flow, because enough things are lining up for you from what you're telling us that these things are aligned and that it's all checking off. And it's going to be a good experience one way or another. No, you're right. I mean, it's good. I mean, it's pressing. You know, on the mind, it's huge. You sit there and you have all this great opportunity, and you think, you know, what you have here, and you go, dude, are you doing the right thing? You know, it's like you question it. But like you said, you got to kind of trust the process, and nothing's permanent, you know. So I always go, all right, I'm going to give it a full year and do this. But sometimes, you know, when you just get up and move, you hate to leave the comfort zone or you know, the wire, so to speak. And to me, that's what it is. It's like I'm going into not fully unknown, because I've got a great community there, but it's just hard to leave when you've built something killer. So I just have to rebuild it, you know, when I get there. So. Yeah, and something that we've been hearing a lot lately is that when you approach things, so it's like how big your window is for possibilities and your neuroplasticity, or how much range you have. But essentially when you're going into a new space, you're almost like have a blank canvas or a child's like thing. So the opportunities are endless and the outcomes are endless. Yeah. Almost compared to here, where we've been here for a long time, so we kind of expect, or we know what's going to happen to some extent. So then there's less outcomes available for us. So I'm excited to see you get out there and see what you have to accomplish. One last question before we get into our closing is, what's something that none of us know about you, or something interesting about you that people don't know? And you can tell us because you're leaving. So
no, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, really. Jeez, man. I don't know if it's really that many. I don't know if I have really that many interesting things like that. Shit.
Or you have too many you don't want to share.
Maybe so, yeah.
you eat a lot of donuts or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I have a huge sweet tooth, but that's nothing new, you know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. I think. Well, yeah, dude, that's such a good question because I don't know if I'm hiding shit or what, but I can't really come up with something. Because to me, I'd want it to be something paramount. Where like, really, dude?
All right. So
I mean, this is minor. This is kind of funny. Back when I was still doing sports or whatever, I just wanted to do something different, and I was dating this girl that had incredible legs, and I was like, you know what? And I really got into like shoes, you know, and I was like, dude, I've always wanted to design women's platform shoes. It was kind of weird, you know.
That's a good one.
But dude, I was and that was kind of in my head going, dude, that's what I want to do because I love, you know, like a sexy foot in a shoe, and I was like, oh my god, dude, dude, something totally different, and that would blow people's minds. And I'm going, I want to do that. I looked into it, but I was kind of like going, really, dude? You know, I was going, yeah, I'll call it Charlie, you know, something rad, you know, and it just never went, but that was something in my mind that was so off the cusp and whacked out, whatever you can think about it, but I was actually trying to be serious and going, I could do this, you know, but
yeah, sounds like you could do anything for your mind to go. So maybe if this Vermont thing doesn't work out, we'll reattack that in the future.
Always have an alternate in the back pocket.
But you know, life's gotta be fun, otherwise it's not worth it, right? You know,
yeah, for sure. Well, Chuck, thank you so much for coming on. But before you take off, please tell the people how they can find you on social media, on YouTube, see some of your crazy ski, surf, snow videos out there. So let people know.
Best way to get to see my exploits, so to speak, would be Chuck Patterson on Instagram, and then Chuck Patterson Athlete is my website, so you can get a hold of me there. And Facebook's same thing, Chuck Patterson. But I'd also, in closing, like to say to the deep end fitness people out there, it is one of the sickest communities to date that I've been a part of, and if you haven't tried it, you got to do it, because no matter what kind of training you do, it complements everything you do, and the community is filled with amazing athletes and normal people around, and no attitude. It's very humble, and there's a lot of growth, and I'm going to miss it, but I'm going to create a new one in Vermont.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, brother.
Thanks for coming on. And a couple of shout outs to our sponsors too. One, Free Your Mind. For the last year, Don and I have taken all of our training and put it into a book that's on pre-sale, but it launches June 1st, and also a virtual course. So check out Free Your Mind, FYMcoaching.com, as well as Underwater Torpedo League. We've been expanding throughout the last year, and we have programs opening up in Miami and following on in Texas, as well as Deep in Fitness.
All right. Cheers.
Sponsors.
Oh.
Melon.
Melon,
Melon
right here.
Trying to make it happen.
Best hats.
We got the homies over at
sports. Yeah.
10,000.
Yes, and we talked about some of Chuck's footage. We're going to get Brian. So our last sponsor we're mentioning is Elevate Weekly here with Brian. Check him out at elevateweekly.com. That's where we do all of our studio work as well as marketing and other things. So check us out. Leaving the Wire, Season 2, Episode 1 with Chuck Patterson. Thank you, fam.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Awesome. Dope, brother.
Yeah,
dude.
That was
awesome.
so much. Yeah. Dude, I'm glad we